Hey, and welcome back to the Dice Tower for another rapid fire roundup. In this one, I'm going to take a look at 7 different games or game adjacent. I am going to take a look at some yellow puzzles, which are not specifically a game, but adjacent, right? But other than that, I'm taking a look at 7 different games that I have played recently that I was not part of the main group studio review here, and I just want to share my thoughts on and kind of talk about how they differ from the main studio or ride it along in with them. I'm also going to take a look at a game that's a little bit older, coming from 2021. That's going to be Canopy. Super excited to talk about this as I've been getting into the table quite a bit, but we'll save that for my actual thoughts. Let's go. All right, well, with that, let's just start right there at Canopy. I had a hard time rating this one. I'm going to come in at a 7.5 on it. Canopy, first of all, is absolutely gorgeous, and I love nature-themed games. I'm one of those people that's not tired of them yet. Just show me something neat about them or a different part of nature, I'm probably going to try it out. Especially you put some Vincent Dutrait artwork in there and his take on it. Oh, I was so excited to get this one to the table. So I finally roped in a couple people to play it with me, and I did not know it had the Winston draft. This is one of my favorite ways to draft. So you have 3 piles. You can look at the first pile and you can decide to keep it. If not, you put it back on the table and add another card to it. Then you can look at the second pile. Same thing, you either keep it or put it back down and add a card to it. And then the third option, you can do it as well until you take one of those piles and you play everything into it. So I love this. It's a draft that feels like a little bit of, it's not push your luck, but you don't know. You're like pushing your luck, but also pushing the opponent's luck. Are you giving them something juicy that's really going to make that pile set apart? Or are you passing up on something that might come down? I love the tension of a Winston draft, and this is done so very, very well. That being said, the scores in this game can be wild. I think in one round I scored 6 points, and my opponent that I was playing with scored like 27. In the end of the game, because you play through 3 rounds, our scores ended up being only 3 different. And so it ended up being a very tight game, which is good. And I think it just shows the need for all 3 of those rounds. But that does kind of make it overstay its welcome. It just pushes right up against overstaying its welcome. So this game I went really back and forth on, but what brings it down is it kind of overstaying its welcome and that really swingy nature of the scoring. But the flip side of that, what brings it up is the artwork, the Winston draft, and the fact that I just can't stop thinking about it. It's finding its way to my table, and for that, it's a 7.5 for Canopy. And right there with the same score at a 7.5, we're going to have the Battle of Versailles. This game is designed for 2 players, and that is immediately evident. I mean that in the best compliment possible. This is clearly a well-developed and designed 2-player card game in which you're both one side of this Battle of Versailles. What is the Battle of Versailles? I had no idea before this game, but that is something that I think speaks very highly to it, is the game makes you care about the theme. I had no idea. I'm not into fashion. I'm not into war games, but somehow it manages to bring both of those things to the table and feel good. I love the asymmetry of this. If you're playing as the Americans in this battle, you have a lot more actions. They're not as powerful, but you're trying to really push the limits of fashion with collecting different fabrics and just being a little over the top. If you're the French, you're playing a little bit more classically with less turns but big powerful movements and really having a lot of celebrity pull and power behind you, and ultimately you both have your own win conditions. So I find this is a very, very well balanced game where you simultaneously feel so overpowered on your turn but underpowered on the other person's turn. So a great balance, a good tension. Ultimately only a 7.5 because this type of game is not really in my wheelhouse. I don't love card battler kind of feels. Like I said, it kind of feels like a card battler. Can be a little bit nasty with you have a really good turn and then the opponent just undoes it and it feels like you set yourself back 3 rounds. So I don't really love those games, those types of games, and it definitely has that feel and has those like gutted moments. But at the end of the day, I do enjoy the game and thought it was very, very well done for a 2-player game, and one that I definitely don't mind sitting down. And if either of these things do draw you in, 2-player battle kind of card games, or if you're interested in fashion, or you do know about the Battle of Versailles, want to know more, this is a neat one to check out. So that's a 7.5 for Battle of Versailles. Now, WitchDraft is another one that I had a really hard time rating. Ultimately, I settled on a 7 for the game. It really doesn't do anything special, and by no means would I call any part of this innovative. It does have a cute little dragon theme with the baby little dragons, and they're so floofy and cute, but it's a simple drafting game where you're trying to arrange your tiles down below where they will score the most points at the end. It's pretty abstracted as a theme, but visually pleasing to look at. I do think it plays better at higher player counts, as with most drafting. If you're playing at 2 players, for example, you see all your options and it becomes more of a, I hope that comes back to me, rather than I wonder if there's another one out on the table at all. So it changes your strategy a little bit, and I prefer them at a higher player count. But I find that with most drafting games, so it can be swingy with the cards are out there, and maybe early game you go into a strategy that isn't going to play out. But ultimately it plays quick, it's cute on the table if you're drawn in by the artwork on this one, or if you really love drafting games and you just want another filler, 15-minute card game of it, it's one that I would recommend for that. So nothing innovative, nothing really going to set it apart, but I did enjoy my plays of WitchDraft, which is what brought me down to a 7. Now, Vale of Eternity, I am the outlier on. I will say that up front. In the office, everyone was enamored with this game. I came down at a 7 on it. I think it's doing some interesting things. One thing I really like is in the card selection part, you have your 2 little tokens, and you're claiming 1 card, and then it snakes back to you and you claim your 2nd card. At which point then you can pull those cards into hand and play them, if you will, in any order you want as you're triggering them. And I think that was an interesting way to do a take on a drafting game. Ultimately, I had some graphical issues with this game. I think just in setting it up and putting the cards out, the colors are kind of similar, but also I couldn't always tell where the color went. Maybe that's a me thing, but I ended up after my 2nd play, I said, you know what, fine, for all the other plays, I'm just not touching the cards until the graphics. I just could not wrap my head around how this game's set up. So that's a me issue. Also with the way the cards are in a circle, it has a little bit small text, so it was a constant battle of oh, let me pick that up. Okay, great. Oh, what's this one do again? Okay, great. What's this do? I found that in every game, everyone was picking up the cards constantly, which just kind of slowed a drafting game down. For one that is a little bit text and power heavy, I would rather a hand of cards that you pick one and you pass along. So I did feel like that chugged the game a little bit. So ultimately I did enjoy it, but the graphic design just got in the way a little bit too much that after a couple plays I was happy either way. So it's a 7 for me. I'd recommend it if you do like these kind of games. I'd happily play it if you're really passionate about this game. But it was pretty average. It was a high average. We'll say a 7. Now, Pioneer Rails is one that I was originally going to review with the group here in the studio. The day of recording, for whatever reason, I wasn't. I have no idea now. We're talking, over a month ago that this happened. And honestly, I'm kind of glad, because in initially rating it, I probably came in at like a 7.5, maybe, probably not 8. I think it probably would have come in at a 7.5. But it has dropped significantly since then because I have felt no desire to go back to it. I feel like the things that held me back from really grasping and loving this game is what ultimately is now keeping me from getting it to the table to where I don't have a desire, and it's not going to come to mind when I'm thinking of recommending a roll and write to somebody. So Pioneer Rails, I'm coming in at a 6.5. It definitely felt like a bunch of little decisions that you hope to pan out. There's a lot of different things that you can do with your poker hand. Are you going to go into the railroads? You're going to go into the gold? Are you going to go into, all these different things? But it didn't come together smooth enough for me. It just felt like a lot of fractured decisions, and I just didn't like that. So it's one of those, it was fine when I played it, I didn't have a problem, but the further I've got away from those plays, the less I want to play it. And it's not been that long, like I said, maybe 2 months ago. That's a quick fall in a short amount of time for me. And so for that, Pioneer Rails is a 6.5. Not quite there to recommend it. Going back up the scale here on these yellow puzzles, I'm going to come in at an 8. All right, these puzzles are really neat. I feel like it's a new way to experience a game that you already love. So for example, in some of the King of Tokyo ones, it's like a movie poster of this big epic fight that's happening. I think that is so, or like a boxing match, right? I think that's so exciting and such a neat take on these games, these classic games that we love. Also, I did the Bunny Kingdom one, which I thought was so cool that the puzzle you're building is a few seconds after the box cover. So you don't actually know what you're building. You have this kind of reference piece, but you're not building that exact thing. And it just led to some really, it felt like I was playing a game, right? It almost felt like an exit game or something where I'm trying to puzzle, it together and figure it out. Like, what could this be? Well, this green glow, there's no green glow over here. Okay, but this background kind of looks there. So it was almost a puzzle within a puzzle. And I really enjoyed that. Some negatives on them that bring this down to an 8 for me is the pixelation on the images got in the way at times. The image quality on the printed actual physical puzzle was pretty short. There was the one that I did that had the white background for King of Monster Island. That pixelation actively got in the way. It's a puzzle that already has a lot of white happening and various grays as you're trying to piece together these backgrounds, and the pixelation made it really frustrating at times. That one took me the longest to do, not because it was the hardest, but because I didn't really feel myself drawn back to keep going to it because of that frustration factor. So the yellow puzzles, I really enjoyed my time with them. I would definitely recommend them, but the quality is just a little bit short. Oh, and as I'm taking it out, some of the puzzle pieces were together, and when you took them apart, it did pull back the image. So again, the quality just isn't quite there in what I would want for these, but the experience is so fun. Puzzles are one-off. I definitely think it was worth that one-off time that I put into each of these. So the yellow puzzles are going to be an 8. Now with Elawa, I had the opposite experience of what I talked about with Pioneer Rails. Pioneer Rails started really high, and then I kind of started backing off that the further and further I got from those gameplays and didn't really feel a draw to go back. Elawa has been the opposite for me. I'm going to come in at 8.5 on this. I think it is an excellent game. It is so quick and easy to get to the table. It's very easy to teach and very intuitive once you play that first round. I find it a great tension and puzzle of which of the stacks, or I'm sorry, which card you want to take. Sometimes you take the card because of the scoring opportunities down in your tableau. Sometimes you take because it's going to get the resources that you want. Sometimes you take it because it's just, there's nothing else out there and you just want to empty out one of those stacks to get the bonus thing, so maybe to get the bonus token, so maybe you can go ahead and build something else in your hand. A lot of really interesting decisions that don't AP or bog the game down. I got this to the table, first of all, after SN last year, and when I got it home and got to the table, I was like, oh, that's cute, a little game. I was like, that's interesting, that's neat. I maybe started at a 7.5 on this, which in retrospect is right where I started with Pioneer Rails. That one went down. This one just kept going up because I decided to take it to conventions and be like, this will be the convention game that I take when I only have 30 minutes, but it's almost time for dinner, but not quite enough time to go back to the room. What do? Let's take out a game of Elawa real quick. And it has just grown and grown and grown to now where it is one that I actively seek out on one of those weeknights where I want a quick game or a filler game. It's one that I reach for in multiple situations. I think it has a wide range of appeal who can play it, because again, that skill level is very low, but it still has enough interesting decisions for those hardcore gamers, if you will. So Elawa, I think, has a great reach. It's a fantastic game, and is one that, gosh, just keeps giving. I really like it. Elawa is an 8.5. All right, there you go. Those are my thoughts on those 7 different games. Let's see, starting out on the bottom end, of course, was the Pioneer Rails. What a disappointment. That one kind of hurt to review. But then going all the way up to that seal of excellence with Elawa. Man, I'm really enjoying getting that to the table. Have you played any of these? What were your thoughts on them? Have you enjoyed them? Have you not? Do you agree with us? Disagree? Where do you stand? Let me know in the comments down below. I look forward to talking to you there. Take care.